not just anyone can come up to Alaska and film in the conditions that we do. It definitely takes a certain breed of person to film up here.
It's super windy, our cameras aren't working, and it's getting super frustrating.
Working on Life Below Zero. The biggest challenge is getting out there. We can only get to about 100 miles away from where we're going by plane, and then the rest of the way we need to go on snow machines.
We're not living in a hotel. We are literally in a remote place. In order to capture that true story, we have to live that lifestyle too.
It takes such an effort to get out here that once we do make it out here, we really want to make it work, as the logistics are just so daunting.
The wind's picking up. It's about -15 right now. They need to get it out of here before it freezes in there, otherwise it ain't moving at all.
You can't be complacent. You need to prepare properly every time you go in.
Something does go wrong, we're in the middle of nowhere. We can't go down to the corner store and buy another one or get it fixed, so we just got to figure it out on the fly.
We're working outside all the time. The more we can do with different angles, different camera placement, just getting creative and doing our best to make it look different each episode.
Half the battle is the ingenuity and being innovative and creative. The best thing we can do is get the hell out of the way and let the camera do its work.
Finally got some sleep last night. We've been going 40 hours, 30 hours, something like that without sleep.
It's incredible that we get to do this, riding across the Arctic Ocean. We're really feeling lucky right now. This place is incredible, beautiful, and wild, and makes for really wonderful television.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in for this special panel on Life Below Zero. I'd now like to bring out three of the individuals behind Nat Geo and BBC Studios' extraordinary Emmy-winning series. First, we have showrunner and executive producer of Life Below Zero, Joe Litzinger. Up next, we have the owner and operator of the Kavik River Camp, who's been with the series since season 1 as a documentary subject. Please welcome Sue Akins. And finally, we have another documentary subject, Athabascan hunter and trapper Rico DeWild. Hello, everyone.
Hi, thanks for having us.
It's great to see you all again. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Thank you so much for being here. Well, Joe, you've now recently wrapped your 12th season with Life Below Zero, having begun this journey in 2013. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about what inspired you initially to take on such a challenging series concept, and how you've gone about selecting documentary subjects for the show.
Sure. I mean, initially, it was a paycheck, so that was great to have.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't know really what it was. Just that when I was hired, that National Geographic and BBC were starting a new show about Alaska, and as someone who loves documentaries, you hear the words BBC and National Geographic. It doesn't matter what the job is, you take it. And like you said, it's been a great ride.
Definitely. Well, Sue, you've also been with the show since day one, and you've gained quite a following. Can you talk a little bit about your journey with the show? Like, what was it comfortable for you to be showing your life on screen from the beginning, or did you need to gain a certain level of comfort with that?
It's I really value my alone time. I guess it's kind of like being a living paradox, maybe. I love my alone time. You know, and people, they meet me and they go, "Oh my gosh, you know, you're so personable. We thought you hated people." And I'm like, "No, I love people. I just don't want to live anywhere near you." You know,
Fair enough.
so
Yeah.
it can be that it's difficult for me to stop talking. That's one of the things that happens when you live alone. You have a lot to say when you finally get to talk to somebody. But it can be difficult to all of a sudden turn around and there's this thing in your grill all the time. So it is definitely a learning experience. And but it's been, I tell you what, it's a labor of love too, because I've grown to have a family with these guys. And you're watching the clip and seeing their perspective on what they go through to get the shots. I'm out there living my life. And sometimes you lose sight of the fact that these guys actually don't live here, but they do. You know, so it's interesting to see it through their eyes.
You've sort of become a bit of an icon for women who live off the grid with this show. I wonder how that makes you feel.
I don't, you know, beware putting yourself on a pedestal, because, you know, it's going to suck when you fall. So don't put it up too high.
Sure.
I think that, you know, you got to keep it real. And I think I'm fairly good at that. But, you know, I think that any time through just being me, if that can help somebody be them, you know, there's not a gosh darn thing wrong with that. You know, I love Alaska. I love the rural life. I love repurposing, reusing, using these little things we call fingers and putting everything I own into it to manufacture something that's useful. And that's living remotely. That's being successful in life. People have a habit of calling the things that flop out of my beak suisms. And people find that genuine and helpful.
Yeah.
Is it a role model for women? Maybe. And if it makes a young lady feel good about being what some people call overweight, if it makes them feel good, if it makes them feel powerful, and if it keeps them being a good human being, yeah, I feel really great about it.
Yeah. Well, Rico, in terms of
I don't know if kicking machinery and swearing a lot is helpful, but it represents me being who I am unashamedly.
Authenticity.
And that can be helpful. That's liberating.
Absolutely. Well, Rico, I was curious, you know, if you could talk a bit about your experience coming to the show and being on it with your kids. Like, was it similar to Sue's experience in terms of there being a bit of a learning curve there in getting comfortable with the cameras?
To be honest, I didn't really know what to expect with the whole filming, but when Life Below Zero hit me up, it probably was. I didn't watch too much. I don't watch too much TV, but now I watch the episodes on Life Below Zero, of course. I was scared, you know, at first, and especially didn't want to be like, I'm coming from a huge native community, so misrepresenting them could be real bad for me. And so I'm basically putting it in the network's hands to produce something that really truly represents me and my people. Most importantly, my people, because when it's all said and done, I'll still be at home with the native community. So I'm real scared at first, and then it was hard for me to kind of speak and all that, and scared to speak, I'd say. But in the end, I'm real happy with what they're doing, and I feel honored to be shining a positive light on my native community and how we do things and how we move around out there.
Yeah. Well, Sue kind of touched on this, but for you, Rico, I was curious, you know, obviously you're someone who's lived off the grid for a great many years now. Can you kind of speak to the things you enjoy about that, being someone who's sort of been social distancing before it was in vogue, so to speak?
I think it's a very purposeful life. You know, everything you do, if you have to get something to drink, you have to work for it, and a lot harder work, because just to have heat in your house, you got to burn firewood. water to do dishes, to cook. You got to chop a hole in the ice in the winter, and you got to keep that water hole open. So I'd say a lot more work, but it's very gratifying living this lifestyle, and it's peaceful. And I know it seems like the jungle, living in the woods of Alaska to some people, but the social jungle is a lot more dangerous and a lot more crazy than any lifestyle I'm used to.
Yeah, I can't imagine. But you touched a bit on your heritage. Can you tell us a little bit more about your Athabascan Indian heritage and the survival skills you rely on that are unique to your culture?
Well, I'm Athabascan, Koyukon Athabascan to be exact. And where I come from, there's a lot of culture. And with culture comes knowledge on how to harvest foods, where to go, when to go, which animal is in season, and which animal not to bother. And it's very complex on how we live. And it becomes second nature to us as natives because it's like passed on knowledge. And we have good teachers. Basically, our elders is our teachers. And this is the knowledge we're using. It's not like we got a wild hair up our ass one day and went out in the woods and started learning this. This is, you're born and raised in it. And it's passed on knowledge. There's nothing better than passed on knowledge. And that's what my native culture is all about, is survival. And also not only my survival and my family's survival and my people, but also the survival of Mother Earth, not to harm Mother Earth. So it's a lot about respecting nature, respecting this planet, so that it continue to provide for us year after year for millennia.
Well, in the episode we screened tonight, Winter Inferno, we see you trapping muskrats with your kids. Could you maybe elaborate on some of the important lessons from your culture that you passed down to your children and why it's been important to do that at an early age?
I think having my kids out there with me, it brings me back to when I was a kid, and my late mom, she's the one that taught me how to trap muskrat. And for sure, it's all about survival because you don't want to end up going to the ice anywhere. And also just how everything relates. Everything in nature relates to each other. Everything happens for a reason. And they say life is unfair, but there's a fair reason why everything happens when you're in nature. You'll see whether it seems fair or unfair. It's why things happen. And I think it's important that I teach my kids these lessons. And also what my mom told me is you don't know what society will bring. It's a new era that my people are living in. It's not even 100 years old that we're no longer nomadic and living off the land. Even though we still live off the land, it's easy to get brought into a society where we rely completely on what society and the government brings. But something she taught me is don't let go of this, thousands of years of passed on knowledge for this new lifestyle, because it's not really proven that long, whereas our culture is proven for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And we know that as long as we know this knowledge and this culture, that no matter what happens with what's going on today, that we'll be okay.
One of the themes in terms of change that this episode addresses is climate change. Sue, can you maybe give us a sense of how your life has been most directly impacted by climate change?
There's a lot of ways, here at Kavik that one of the most notable things the rivers are seeing up here in the high Arctic. There's an anomaly happening. All of the rivers out here last season started turning just a really goopy, thick red. It's not a clay, it's a unique substance, killing a lot of the fish. One river goes down, the next one from west to east, they all start going down. Then it froze up. Took some samples, sent it in, and then the virus hit the globe. That sort of took precedence. This spring, everything thawed out. Now it's starting to happen again, this same event. The environment I'm getting, I used to get only winds out of the north. Now winds are out of the south. With that is carried a whole lot more snow and water. It's classified an Arctic desert. 8 inches of precip, no matter what form it takes. Now I'm getting 22, 28 feet of precipitation and snow. That's a vast difference. It's not that way each year, but it's a marked difference, and it's major flooding. The glaciers, however, are retreating. Now, you know, people say, oh, the climate is warming, you know, things are warming up. Well, part of this is a new event, but, you know, I wouldn't have fossilized banana leaves if we never warmed up before. But this is such a rapid change that, you know, there are market changes happening, and we've got to learn to deal with them. Some of these other events that are happening tectonically, there's a lot of tectonic activity out here. In Alaska, down by Anchorage, saw, you know, an extremely large earthquake, the biggest one since 1964. So, you know, there's many events happening all around the world. But the ecology up here, you know, the water is one of the things that I would say is just an extreme thing. It's bringing new plants, old plants are going out, the animals are being affected, the caribou are migrating. Right now, this year, we had a lot of caribou that migrated up, and right now, 200,000 caribou went east and migrated right back out into Canada. They're not even here. 10,000 went to Prudhoe Bay. Don't know. I guess they're going to help drill oil. I'm not sure why they went there, but 200,000 went into Canada. That's going to affect the villages here. That's going to affect the food that people can get.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of change happening. The climate is definitely affecting the animals. It's affecting whether there are even fish available. So for even if it's a small population that lives this far north, my neighbors are villages. They may be far away from me, but we rely on that. It's a subsistence lifestyle for many, including myself. But you know, it's going to really change how we do things here.
Yeah. Well, Joe, I'm curious if you could talk a bit about what a day in the life of the showrunner on the show looks like, and maybe if you could address some of the unique challenges of making Life Below Zero.
Sure, I fully realize most of the audience is not here to hear me talk, so I'll keep my answers brief. But you know, lately a day in the life is in quarantine in this room. You know, I'm sort of the only crew member in this Zoom, but you know, I represent 50 something employees between post and field, to PA, to the network, to you know, corporate, who make this show as a team. Obviously the cast is out there doing their thing, and we send the crews as you saw in the video. But you know, there are a lot of people who aren't in that video who are doing their thing to make this show. I mean, I try my best, I think, to really just sort of find good people and stay out of the way. That's pretty much my day, trying to stay out of the way.
Well, like, what can you elaborate on sort of the challenges for your crew in terms of shooting at these extremely cold temperatures that get below, you know, 30 below? Obviously there's a lot that goes into that and a lot that can go wrong in that process.
Absolutely. You know, you see Sue and you see what Rico does, and I always, during these Q&As, try to remind the audience to think about a camera person with, you know, 40 pounds of gear trying to follow them around. Rico's been doing this his whole life, and we're sending, you know, sometimes people from the city to follow them. The extreme conditions are unlike anything I've ever witnessed, and for the crew as well, constantly trying to figure out how to film in these extreme environments, and an environment, as you mentioned, that is not just changing seasonally, but day to day. You know, recently we were out there, and fortunately I was home, but the crew was out there, and it was -60, I think, at Rico's, which and we've seen, I think, close to -70 at Sue's. So as you can imagine, humans don't do that well in those conditions, and definitely camera gear does not. For example, you know, those batteries, our lithium batteries, die very fast. The LCD screens freeze. Oftentimes the camera people are just trying to shoot blind because the screen is frozen. Not to mention, you know, trying to film and maneuver precise gear, including drones and specialty, and 3 layers of gloves. And just when you think you have it all figured out, summer hits and it's 90 degrees, 24 hours of daylight, hot, sweaty. It's definitely an extreme environment for the crew.
It's also it also has always sounded like it's a lot of fun for your team out there, right? In the sense that they're, especially the cinematographers, are getting to play with all these toys. You got drones and all these things, and they really do a lot to keep raising the bar with the imagery.
I think so, and I think that is a testament to them. A lot of them having been on the show for so long, and a lot of the trust that the cast puts in the crew in the field, the producers and the cinematographers, to work together to get the shot. It's even more of a challenge because it's a documentary and it's not scripted, and it's trying to figure out how do we, there's no do-overs when you're filming a caribou hunt or trapping or anything like that. And it's sort of working in tangent in a cohesive unit with the cast to follow and capture what they do, and like you mentioned, continually elevate the cinematography, and of course stay out of their way, because they are living their life and literally they need to get that food, they need to get that water, and you don't want to say, well, wait, don't take that shot, because, and it's sort of that balance. And then the other, but the other important element, of course, is safety. It is fun for them out there, but it is the environment that you see on the show, and it's extreme. And obviously we take safety very, very seriously, but trying to do all that, trying to film, trying to be in those conditions, and then trying to stay safe, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just butt in because that's what I do.
Please.
I will add that one of the things that they deal with, and I think I say it each time, is one of the dangers that they deal with, and they do it with finesse much more than I would, is dealing, and I can only speak for myself, and I find it's humorous on one level. You're dealing with a menopausal female that doesn't have her head wrapped too tightly, and you're pushing to get a story that, I'm out there, I'm doing something. We've all seen me go out with a sledgehammer and hit the equipment, and yet they're there saying, hey, that's cool, can I get it from a different angle? And and I'm about 6 eggs shy of a dozen going, what? So you're trying to film half a keg of dynamite and holding a match, but they do it with a great amount of finesse. And at 30 below, when you had mentioned, at 30 below zero, and I'm snickering over here going, by the time I've gone through 3 months of 40 below and 50 below, at 30 below, I am wearing a tank top going, it's the end of the world. It's so hot out here, and they're out there, and they I may be wearing gloves and swearing and kicking or laughing, and I think I'm the funniest person God ever created, because when you're alone,
I agree.
You do get to be Robin Williams. But they're having to take their gloves off and hold these cameras. I look at Rico's stuff, and Rico, I have to say, your kids are the bomb diggity, and how you treat them and how you teach them is just amazing. And I watch you lift these weights and these moose racks that are as tall as you, and I'm thinking, dude, I've been out here in Kavik my 30s, 40s, 50s, and I'm going to be 60 in a year and a half, and I'm going, nope, I'm making a sled. I'm gonna learn how to make everything, because nope. But each cast member, you say, Joe, what do you do? And I'm thinking, dude, he finds the interesting people, not just that's on the show, but to film us. And they're so creative. But yeah, I see what Rico does, and I'm like, wow, I'm glad they found him, because I'm not putting that weight on my back and carrying it nowhere. I'm going to cut down a tree and have it drag that thing out, but
Yeah.
we're all so different, and it makes the show so unique. So thank you, Joe, for what you do. Don't short sell yourself.
Well, thank you guys.
To continue on that, I'm jumping in to bring some questions from the audience, and we have many questions. So to continue on the comment from Sue Joe, we have a question from an audience member saying, how do you choose your participant on your show?
Sure. We started the show with a casting team, basically someone trying to look for people in Alaska, which, as you can imagine, is a bit of a unique challenge. The people you want on the show, like Sue mentioned earlier, don't typically watch TV or don't want to be seen usually. And it could range from posting something online, Facebook, to, sort of survivalist groups, those kinds of things, to literally going to bars or traveling around and saying, like, do you know anyone interesting? Rico, Rico, how did we find you? It was a long process, right?
Some person was filming that wasn't with Life Below Zero back in like 2012, I believe, and he did a quick little moose hunt with me. And he was having trouble hunting around, getting any video around Hoosta, and then he liked what he got. He made a YouTube channel for me and started posting videos, and he'd come out every fall when I'm moose hunting and film me, and then put it on my YouTube channel. And then eventually Scouts, Ali Siegel with National Geographic started reaching out to me.
And that's really the process, is just trying to find the right balance and the right people. And we've been fortunate now that we've been on the air for so much that we start to get approached by people who see the show, and that hopefully, like Rico mentioned, our reputation precedes us, and people trust us and trust National Geographic and BBC.
To continue on the question for you, Rico, we have a comment from an audience member saying, you are my son's, her son's age is 7, favorite person on the show. He loves watching you teach your kids to teach your kids your ancestors' way of life. My son wants to know, what's the largest animal you ever caught?
Thank you. I really appreciate it. To the kid, appreciate that. The largest animal would have to be a moose. I don't know the weight. I don't have no scale. I mean, you can't really throw it on a scale, I guess. But yeah, probably a moose, a big moose.
Another question, have you spoken your native language your whole life?
I don't speak it fluently, but my late mom, she spoke it fluently. That was her first language. And she used it a lot when we were around. So a lot of the words like cut means go away. I heard that a lot, like cut, don't bother, if she's doing something or getting too close. So stuff like that I didn't know was actually native language until I kind of hit society. I was raised in the woods till I was 18. So yeah, I know some of it, but not all of it.
And the question for Sue, you acquired an amazing set of skills running the Kavik camp. What percentage of skills did you have before Kavik, and what percentage have you acquired along the way?
I had a lot of skills before I got to Kavik. I had a 400-mile trap line and a dog team before I ever got here, and I brought the dogs with when I got here. I was here quite a few years before the show, 13, 14 years before the show started. So I've been here for quite a while. And, I did many things before. So, like I say, when I got here, the only thing I knew about diesel mechanics was how to bake bread. In other words, I had a huge learning curve on diesel mechanics. I think when you're born, you start learning and doing. And I had a very tactile nature. I don't think the same way other people do. And I'm one of those people that, you line your yellow cars up with your green cars next, then your red cars. The red cars never go with the yellow cars. I'm one of those thinkers, one of those autistic people that everything is size and color organized. Don't mess that. And I take things apart and put it back together, and I think in pictures. And when you're like that, you start learning how to take things apart early. And I needed that knowledge from a young age. And that's just a lifelong, that turned into a lifelong passion. Anything that I want to learn, I read. I'm a voracious reader. And you keep doing that. You do that your whole life. And anytime I went on vacation earlier. I lost quite a few family members this winter and decided I'd pull one out of the bucket list. And on vacation, I decided to go and learn how to tango, because why not? There's not anything I'm going to stop learning.
To continue, question from the audience about you. How do you cope, Sue, with distance isolation versus self-isolation at Kavik camp? Although you are alone, you seem quite happy and fulfilled, which I admire so much. As many of us struggle with isolation at this time, what's your secret to your mental health wellness?
Boy, anybody that really knows me, I don't know that they would call me mentally well. But, you know, and I make a joke, I say there's about 14 personalities in there. So, you know, and I haven't met them all, so there's time to meet some friends. I think, you know, I've said it a long time ago, you know, and at the very beginning of the show, I think it's one of the very first things they asked me is, what is the most important tool to bring? Was that question even for me, or was that for Joe? Because I see Joe now.
It was, the question was for you.
I was gonna say, oh man, but I just totally stole that stage, didn't I? Holy cow.
Sorry for the confusion. Yes, it was for you.
It's for you, Sue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I stole that stage. Nice. 10 points. Yeah, you know, what's the most important tool that you can bring when you want to live remote? And that tool is your mind. And it doesn't have to be, you know, it can be a little fragmented. We all have positive and negative traits. We all have a little fragmentation, but be brutally honest with yourself about your better and your lesser traits, because being this isolated, it's going to come right to the surface. So be brutally honest about it, shake hands with it, and deal with it. If you are somebody that you're going to be bummed out about things, admit it and say, wow, I'm going to get bummed out because my butt froze. So deal with that and come up with a routine for it. I am a person that does not care for rain. Instantly, it's going to make me tired and I just don't care for it. So I deal with it. I've been married more than once and I have children. I have grandchildren. I have the eldest grandson is going to be 19. Do I miss them? Yes. And I'm very factual. Isolation, worrying, stressing. Is it going to change the outcome? Is it going to make it better? No. What can I do to benefit where I'm at? If stressing doesn't make the situation better, trash that. What can you do to make it better?
Thank you.
So being alone does not equate with being lonely.
Rico, we have a question for you. How climate change affected hunting and acquiring food?
It depends on which season I'm in, of course, because we hunt different animals, different seasons. And for winter, I would say like beaver snaring, a lot less beaver. The lakes have really dried up. And also when I'm moving around out there hunting and traveling around, a lot of times I'm covering great distances, and the weather has become very bipolar today. It could be real warm one day, and even that day could be raining sometime in January. I've seen it. You hit rainstorms while you're traveling. And so I got to carry like rain gear so I don't get wet, because once that cold air comes in, it's going to freeze you. Moisture is deadly out there. And especially in January, February, December, if it could be warm, but don't let that fool you, because the sun is so far from us that once it turns cold, it happens like within minutes, it starts cooling down. So have to be more cautious, and just different, like I said, different seasons is that certain game are doing better and some are leaving the area and having to go in different areas to look for them. It's, I mean, if I went season to season, I could tell you more detailed, but that takes a lot longer. But that's the best way I could put it, is it's a lot different traveling to get the game, and also a lot of them are doing not so well these days.
Mm-hmm. So we have a question regarding filming. Is it harder to film Kevik than the other locations?
I think each location has unique challenges. You know, all of them, of course, are in Alaska, and I think people realize this, but I didn't realize how distant, you know, you could be in one part of the state from the other. And sort of Sue mentioned earlier, there could be snowing at Kavik, yet it could be sunny or rainy or extreme somewhere else. I don't think Sue is necessarily harder. Definitely sometimes it can be. I mean, it's pretty high up there and there are extremes, but each location I think has their own unique challenges that go with the extremes.
Sue and Rico, do you feel that the show has captured any pivotal moments of change in your life?
I think some of the ways it really changed me, I don't know if that's what you're saying, is like when I'm interacting with my kids and I'm working with them, the camera really loves their questions, and the camera also wants to see them more hands-on. So it made me cater to that more, and it made me a much more patient father. I'd say it made me a better father by being filmed, and I seen the enjoyment, and without having the camera crew to slow me down sometimes and not so much teach them by having them watch me, but teach them by answering their questions and involving them. That's where it really helped me. And also, I don't want to do no sneak peeks or whatever, but I went through some emotional stuff about family loss in this new season we're filming, and it's almost like intervention. Like some things are really eating me up, and after I went through these episodes doing it, I think I healed a lot by doing it. But like I said, I can't go into much detail about it.
And Sue?
The show has been here for a couple of different pivotal moments. Purchasing the camp. There's been more than once when I've broken myself. You get to see, well, like with Rico, there's a few very emotional moments where I don't spend a lot of energy being emotional. It's just not where I choose to dwell. But there are a few very effective producers that can get me to think about emotional things. And it is a self-discovery cathartic thing. And there is something happening at Kavik this year that is going to be extremely pivotal. And it's difficult for me. And at this menopausal stage, I am all over the board. They're just going to have so much fun this season. So much fun filming. It's going to be amazing. You're going to see Happy Sue, Psycho Sue. It's going to be all over the board. So I see a lot of pivots coming up. But yeah, they're and with my grandchildren, you've seen them on the show, and they were tiny, and they're reproductive adults now. And that's something. And you see my reaction to, like I say, I was in my 30s, 40s, 50s, and then I had my thoracic to my booty just during this COVID episode, major spinal surgery. And I'm still here doing it. And for me, it's a focal point of no matter how difficult life gets, as long as you keep this focused, you're still in the game. And that, for me, is the biggest wake up. I'm still in charge.
I would be remiss to if I didn't add that what Sue and Rico are talking about, those stories are airing in September, the new season, but not just my shameless plug, other than to say that we're so grateful to both of them for letting us dive into what they're saying, into these emotional depths that we are. And the longer we are on the show, the more they let us in. Makes for great television.
And I hope that we will
We're
be
never letting you go, Joe. We know how to hide you.
I hope we will be next year at the Arrow Theater to talk about it, and we'll have seen the new season, and the theaters will be open again. I would love to leave with a last question that we received. Now I need to find it, which was about what do you feel is the biggest misconception about Alaska? And that's kind of for everyone. Joe, Sue, Rico, if there's any misconception about Alaska, what do you feel?
I feel like a lot of people looking at Alaska think like some hardheads just grunt work in the extreme weather and conditions, kind of like cavemen. And I think it's a lot different. Like we're a lot more intelligent, and we think very much outside the box to really adapt to these extreme conditions. And I feel like we're not cavemen. We're kind of like environmental doctors or something. We're very intelligent in how to survive, and also have our Mother Earth survive, so that keeps providing for us. So that's what I feel like is the biggest misconception with Alaskans.
Sue?
You don't need a passport to get here. I get asked that a lot, well, have you ever been to America? It's like, yeah, we have. But I can see where they get the idea, because it is common. If you say, when I was, young growing up, if you ever use the term, where are you going, Sue? Oh, we're going to California. That was code for you were going to Anchorage. And if we were going to America, that meant you were going to the lower world, the lower states. But yeah, no, you don't need to get a passport to come here. We're part of the states. We
Actually, I'll add one more.
No isolation. We took it about 6,000 miles away, not 6 feet.
Joe, do you want to add something on Alaska, or?
Sure. I think for me, one of the things people talk about is how beautiful Alaska is, and the nature, and sounds obvious. But I've now been fortunate, I've flown there 50 something times over the last a couple years, and it never gets old. Oftentimes I'm in Anchorage, as Sue and Rico described, El Anchorage, or the city. But even in Anchorage, it's beautiful. 10 minutes out is some of the most amazing landscapes you've ever seen. An hour, and then 2 hours, and every idea of how beautiful Alaska is, I say, is very accurate. The only misconception I think that I hear often is probably because the name of the show is Life Below Zero, but it's not always cold in Alaska. There are several months when it's very hot and lots of mosquitoes. So I guess those are the things, yeah.
State bird.
I think we cannot end with asking you, Sue, because we've got many questions about your garden. How is your garden doing?
My garden. One of the things you can say about Alaska is every year is unique. There's no 2 years that are the same. And this year it started, warming up. It was doing good. My tomato plants were about 1.5 feet and very bushy. And then we went down to 28 degrees and it killed everything. All right. So I replanted and everything got great. And I went back down, got 4 or 5 inches of snow about a week ago, and everything killed, or 2 weeks ago, everything got killed again. Third time for the garden, and I am still going to 30 degrees. But I've got everything growing again, and I'm not giving up. The I expanded the hydroponics, and I came out with a new little system. Now I'm on the third incarnation of it, and everything's going good. So I'm changing what I'm planting, and it is going well. I think I've resolved. I don't think I'm going back down to 20s. So paws crossed. It's going well. I've changed what I'm planting. And if it kicks the bucket again, I'll just plant again. But
good to hear.
So far, so good. I'm going microgreens and squash right now.
Good to hear. So I'd like to thank you, Joe, and Sue, and Rico, and Matt for joining us this afternoon or this evening. I'd like to thank the audience for zooming in. I'd like to invite everyone to join us tomorrow for second days of a discussion for National Geographic program about barskins and cosmos. Check our website for more details, and thank you and have a good evening, everyone. Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you very much. Bye, guys.
Thank you.